Welcome to Bitcoin and Me, Myles, Dhillon. Great to have you on.
Hi, mate. It's really nice to do this.
Yeah. We met at the conference last year. You came along to the conference in September, and we've been regularly in touch since. So it's a bit long overdue to get you on as a guest, and I haven't really been recording recently, but yeah, it's great to have you here.
No, mate, it's cool. Back with a bang with a huge guest, Myles.
Yeah, exactly. Like, who needs Michael Saylor when you've got Myles Dhillon? That's what I say.
I'm here, man.
So, yeah, we'll come on to your journey and what you're doing now in Bitcoin as we go through this conversation, I'm sure. But the first question I ask all my guests is, what's your earliest memory of money?
Yeah, mate, I've forgotten that you do that at the start. My earliest memory of money, gosh, I could have been more prepped for this. I think I remember my uncle. He had one of those huge whiskey bottles. I mean, it's probably not that big now, but it's kind of the size of up to your hips, right? It's massive.
It's like 5 liters or something.
Yeah. I haven't seen one for decades, but he had one, and I used to find it shocking that he drank the whole thing. I was like, was there actually whiskey in there? He's like, yeah, but he used to put coins in there, and it was like a coin collecting thing. And it was almost full with coins. And I used to look in there and think, that's so much money. And he used to say, just to play at my grandma's house, I used to tip it out and start counting how much money was in there. And I think I did count it once, and there was sort of £58 in there in coins, coppers and silvers. And I remember thinking, that is an astronomical amount of money inside there. I mean, it was probably 8 or something like that. But that's my first memory of real money. And my family's Indian. My dad's side of the family are all Indians from Punjab, and it's a very cash-based culture. They love cash. They love giving cash as presents at weddings and birthdays. And so that probably is my earliest memory of seeing my uncle dealing in cash and having large amount. He had a business. I mean, he's died now, but they say there's only 2 things sure in life, isn't it? Death and taxes. And in his case, there was only one, which is death, because I don't think he ever paid any tax his whole life. So that's my earliest memory, is him, his money in the pot, and just him just having cash all the time.
And what about as you got slightly older through your teenage years or early adulthood? What were your influences that affected your thinking about money and how you handled it, how you thought about spending, saving?
I definitely have always been a saver. I have a very clear memory. I had loads of jobs when I was a teenager, but the first job where I got paid a decent amount of money when I finished when you finish your GCSEs and you have like quite a long summer off school, I worked for someone, skateboarding company, building skate parks and doing skate demos. And I worked for 3 months. I think I worked 4 days a week for 3 months. And after I got paid at the end of my first month, it was the first time I had a job where I had to wait for ages to get paid at the end of the month. I normally just get paid daily or like weekly, my little weekend jobs. But I got paid what felt like a huge amount of money. I think it was sort of £1,200 or something for 4 days a week, 4 weeks in a row. And when I got that money in my bank, I remember walking with my friend Christy. We walked from my house into our town to go and check my bank balance. I said, I'm getting paid today at 16. And I was going to buy a PlayStation 2 for like £400. I don't know how much they were back then, but they had just come out. And we'd locked in that we'd be able to go to this computer game shop, buy the games that we wanted and the PS2. And Chrissy came with me, and this was our day plan, that we were just going to get the PlayStation 2, go back to my house, set it up and just play on the PlayStation all day. And we went in, I checked my bank balance, I took cash out from the bank to go inside and get it out. And after I got the cash out in my hand, I just thought, I don't want to spend this on, I don't know if I want to spend it on a PlayStation. And Christy, you can imagine, he was like, what are you talking about, mate? We've been talking about this for like 5 days. What are we going to do today if you don't buy a PlayStation? It's just like, I don't know, but I'm not going to buy it. He was like, oh, so all right, mate, see you later. And he just went and left me in the town. I don't remember what we did after that, but I remember walking home and just thinking, I feel bad that I've let Christy down because we haven't got anything to do now for this whole weekend. But when you're that age and something hit me and thought, I don't think I should spend this much money on this PlayStation thing because that's not the direction I want my life to go in. I don't want to be into games too much, and I want to use this money for something more useful that might be coming up in the future. So I don't know what caused me to have that feeling about money, but it just didn't feel like the right thing to splurge it on a PlayStation, which would have been a third of the amount of money that I got paid. So that's kind of my next memory of making a decision about money, or something which felt quite grown up at the age of 16, to decide, no, I'm going to spend it on something useful, not a PlayStation.
Yeah, I was going to say that is quite a mature outlook for someone that's relatively young, particularly when, there is that friend pressure as well. It wasn't that you went to town on your own and you thought, I'm just going to buy some flash clothes, and then you took the cash out and thought, but there was a consequence to that change in your decision, but you still had the conviction to stick with that. That's quite interesting.
Well, I mean, I'm not saying that I didn't then make bad decisions with my money. I remember going into a designer shop sometime around that period, and I bought some linen trousers. I don't know what I was doing. They were about £120, this pair of linen trousers, basically because the woman in the shop was very attractive and a bit older than me. And I tried them on and she was all like, oh yeah, that's so nice on you. I didn't have anywhere to wear a pair of expensive linen trousers too. I wasn't going on a holiday in the Mediterranean or anything. I just got sold. We came out. My other friend was like, you're a dickhead, mate. Why did you do that? I was like, no, I really like them. But in my head, I was thinking, I've got drawn into this sales by this woman. So I'm not saying I didn't make bad choices, but I tried to make a few slightly better ones.
And it also sounds like you had early value for you had an early appreciation for the value of money, and the fact that your time and energy had to go into to get this thing that you could take out of the bank. You had to spend 4 weeks to get all of that.
Yeah.
To then spend it was very, very easy.
Yeah, and the job was hard manual labor, really, as well. It was really hard, really long hours. It's the sort of job where you feel like if you work out your hourly rate, it's very low, even would have been below minimum wage for sure. But it was the sort of traveling 3 hours to somewhere, leaving at 6 a.m, doing this really hard laboring work all day, and then having to perform on a skateboard, which was fun, but it was hard. And then packing everything down and then driving. It was hard work, man. So I think probably, just realized that it's not that easy to make money when you haven't got any skills.
And what about other influences from your family, particularly with the cultural background where you say, the money, your family might have had a slightly different cultural approach?
Yeah, maybe other families in the UK. There are two things that I'm thinking about. One is that property is very big in the Indian community. And over my life, when you meet people my age, when I was growing up, in my 20s maybe, you would meet other Indians, almost certainly. If the parents are professional and they've had a business, they will also own some buy-to-let properties as well. It was almost guaranteed that the Indian parents would be investing their money in buy-to-let properties. That's the first thing I knew was a thing. Like, everybody was trying to get buy-to-lets. Everybody in my extended family, the goal was to become a landlord. And no one has pensions. None of my family had jobs where they were employed. They're all entrepreneurs in different ways. Some legit entrepreneurs, some slightly dodgy cash entrepreneurs, doing all different things, shops, corner shops, selling at markets, like all different stuff, construction businesses, car mechanics, like all kind of really normal working class jobs, but always in business, like not working for someone. And no one had pensions. So the vibe is you work hard and then you buy a Mercedes with a personalized number plate, because that's the thing that Indians always do, right? Or a BMW with a personalized number plate. And then you invest your money into a buy-to-let property, and that's your pension. That's what you're going to retire on. But that's definitely in my mind as something that people knew was a very sensible thing to do with your money. And I just grew up thinking that's sensible. That's what you do. I guess the only other thing that I remember is that my parents, I had some money in shares and stocks, but I don't think they really knew what they were doing. They would just buy stuff based on what the newspapers would say. And I think when I was, again, similar age, like 16, 17, 18, I bought some shares in Boots, the pharmacy, and I had £1,000 in a savings account with Abbey National that my parents had saved up. And my parents said, maybe you should buy some Boots shares because we've heard there's going to be a merger or acquisition takeover of it. But they would have definitely only read that in the newspaper. So it wasn't like insider knowledge. So potentially that would have been priced in. But I bought some shares in Boots and it went up sort of 30% or something. And then I sold it and I made £300. But it was not really investing. It wasn't understanding the stock market. It was literally, slightly more developed economic man's form of gambling. And I probably went through a stage in my life where I then got more into investing. I used to read the FT every day. I took some courses at university in investment banking. And I thought I was understanding the stock market more the more I learned about it. And then I had a couple of good trades that I made, a couple of good investments, and I thought I was really clever. But the more I learned about the stock market, instead of learning more and becoming a more sophisticated investor, I just lost more and more confidence. And I just thought, I don't think I can do this. I think I've just been lucky a few times. And I realized that it is really just gambling. And I'm sure some other person will put a very sophisticated argument against me that it's not gambling. But to me, unless you're able to spend all your time understanding the markets and particularly niching into one particular area of the markets, it's still what I did with my parents, which is buying a stock, hoping that it goes up and selling it at the right moment. And if you do it well, you've won and you've sort of picked the right horse, the fastest horse in the race. If you do it wrong, oh well, you lost out. But
Yeah.
that's kind of still pretty early memories of money. And that followed me for most of my life, really, until I found out about Bitcoin.
So did you go down the buy-to-let route as well yourself as you start to earn money? And did you get the Mercedes with a personal number plate?
I've never owned a Mercedes with a number plate, but I do have a personalized number plate that my family bought for me when I was 18.
Okay.
I can't remember
Nice.
I think my parents might have bought it. It says M11YLE, which is sort of my name. And
Nice.
I've got it on my car now. I never had a nice enough car to put it on, but I've got when I was running a plumbing business, I put it on my plumbing van, and just my wife feels so embarrassed. My wife is from much more. She'll hate this. She's from like a pretty private school, upper class. Her dad went to Eton. Her and her brothers all went to the top private schools, and for her, private number plates are very chavvy and nouveau riche.
Yeah.
It would be not the sort of thing that if you're from an upper class family, you would display your wealth in that way. But I've missed your question now. I'm just saying, trying to justify why I've got a private number plate on my car.
Well, about the buy-to-let, about going down the buy-to-let route.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I went the buy-to-let route. Once I started the plumbing business, I started like making, money that I could save as well as just living. And yeah, I was going for it, like full on trying to buy as many buy-to-lets as I can. I didn't get loads, but I have a business with a friend still who's an electrician, who's also a Bitcoiner. We have a couple of buy-to-lets that we hold in a company there. And I've got one left personally. Yeah. Which yesterday I spoke to the agent, spoke to the tenants. It's a flat with the shop below. And now everybody knows that we're selling it. And the estate agent's going around on Friday this week, whenever this comes out, to value it and just get ready to sell it. And I almost have a feeling about that final buy-to-let property that we own personally. I'm like, I sort of don't care what we sell it for. Like, I'm sure it's not a good time to sell property right now. It doesn't feel like it is, but I'm so desperate to offload it because the price of Bitcoin is down at the moment. I feel like I should have started selling it when the price of Bitcoin was up, but now it's dropped. I just want to get rid of it. So yes, I've benefited massively from buy-to-lets. That's kind of set me up financially, but I really believe, and I talk about this a lot on my podcast, that the era of getting rich off property, like my parents may have done or other uncles did, I just think those days are over, man. And Bitcoin is the way for us, for our generation, to really benefit from a huge boom in an asset that I think is going to go up more than anything we've ever seen before.
Yeah, no, I'm inclined to agree. We had a buy-to-let that we sold last year.
Mm.
I think if you're a previous generation, if you're like in your 60s and you bought the property 30 years ago, like it's all gravy. But
Yeah.
for someone who's younger now thinking, well, I could go down that same route, the tax regime is very different. The incentives, the legislation and the rules you've got to abide by as a landlord and all of that just makes it so much harder.
Yeah.
It's not easy money anyway. Like arguably it was easy money back in the day.
Yeah.
As long as you had a deposit to get the property in the first place,
Yeah.
then you're laughing. But yeah, it's a very different world now.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's work as well, man. It's proper work. Like the business that me and my friend Ash, we probably are going to keep those properties, and I'm a lot of anti-buy-to-let, but just because it's more complicated when you're in a business partnership to sell the properties. So we've just both decided, you know what, the only way we view those is that as long as those are providing income, it's stopping us from having to sell our Bitcoin. So for the time being, me and him are just going to keep those ones in that limited company together. But personally, that's really a business, and it really takes work from us to keep that going. It's like when tenants move out, it's a sort of individual room let business. When tenants move out, it's a lot of work, it's a lot of maintenance. But I really look at that with him between us, we've both got the skills as a plumber and electrician to be able to maintain those properties. But the ones I own personally, if something goes wrong, it's all on me. And I got a call while we were on holiday in Cornwall with a problem with the roof. And I was there, without signal in Cornwall trying to call somebody to go out when obviously all the roofers are busy because everybody's roofs are leaking because it's a terrible storm. It's real work, and there's no way you can take time off from it. And that's sort of part of the reason why I'm offloading it. Because I'm like, I do not want that. I'd rather just buy some Bitcoin, do nothing with the Bitcoin and just hold it for a bunch of years. Even if I take some of the equity out of the house and spend that as if it's rent for the next 3 years, I feel pretty confident that the rest of the equity that I put into Bitcoin is still going to outperform what I would receive in rent for the next 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, for sure. So you mentioned there that you set up a plumbing business. Is that because you were kind of following in the footsteps of family members, or did you just not really want employment and work for someone else? Was it, what's the story behind that?
Oh mate, this is like I said, you're like Parkinson. It's like the whole life story. You're the Bitcoin Parkinson.
I'll take. I've been called a lot worse, so I'll take that.
Basically, I don't know how far back I want to go. So I was just doing real tradesman's labouring jobs my whole teen years. That would be what I would look for. I just enjoyed working outside, doing those kind of work with my hands jobs, hard work, physical work. I kind of enjoyed that. Then I started making some music, and I was making a bit of money from the music that I was making. So I went to London, studied some music, college there, carried on making some money in music for a while, and had like a few minor successes as a songwriter. And then I got married, realized that the money I was making from music was enough for a single person to live in London and have a great time. But as soon as I got married and we started looking at building a family together, I thought, probably not. It's not an easy way to make a living from music if you're aware of how average you are and how you've kind of been lucky as well in what you've done. So I had to look around and think, right, what am I going to do? What can I do that creates a large income and is sort of future-proofed as well? And I already knew how to do a lot of the plumbing work. So I trained as a gas engineer, did all the gas safe Corgi exams. And then from there, just started a plumbing business, mate. I'd never did an apprenticeship with anyone. I just learned on the job. So if you're one of my first customers in the first year or two and you're listening to this, I'm really sorry, but I was getting paid to learn in the beginning stage. And yeah, I just built it from there really. And it's been fantastic. It was a great job to be in. And I feel really grateful that I know how to do those things. I actually really enjoyed doing that work. I loved going out into people's houses and doing jobs. And through COVID, it was fantastic because I just carried on working through the whole thing, mostly in people's houses when they weren't there. And yeah, I loved it. That's my route into that. And also, one of the main benefits that I had was I'd bought Bitcoin a long time ago, but I didn't really understand what I owned. But when I was running the plumbing business, particularly when I was on my own, before I had anyone working for me in the earlier days, I just had headphones like this on 8, 9, 10 hours a day, just consuming business and entrepreneur self-development content, but gradually started listening to, if the Bitcoin podcast came up, I would listen to it and I think, I've got some of this stuff. And it was through that gave me the ability to be able to just plow in hundreds of hours of learning about Bitcoin. And that's really when I started buying. Because when I bought Bitcoin the first time, I wasn't really earning anything. So I just bought a little bit. But once I had the plumbing business, I started moving away from buying buy-to-lets and putting my money into that. And the more I would listen to Bitcoin content, the more I would just look at my bank and think, what's the point of having cash in the bank? I'm just going to sweep that into Bitcoin whenever I got paid.
Okay, there's a few things to unpack there I want to ask you about. So that was, I think, from previous conversations I've had with you, that was what, sort of 2012, 13 kind of time, was it? So still
2012 was when I first bought Bitcoin, and then it would be 2016 when I was really learning about it, and the plumbing business was starting to get going, and I was able to, I was actually getting paid something, so I was actually able to put some meaningful money into it back then. But if you're listening, don't try and kidnap me. I can punch pretty hard and run pretty fast, so you may as well go for someone else who's not going to fight back.
But then how quickly did your conviction grow then? So you said about listening to podcasts, not exclusively Bitcoin, but kind of general investing and entrepreneurship with sort of a sprinkling of Bitcoin in it. Like how quickly was that transition to you thinking actually Bitcoin is really all I want to be invested in?
Yeah, it was pretty quick actually. I think if you're watching on video, I sort of my knowledge of Bitcoin was going up as my conviction in the stock market was coming down. And when they crossed over and converged, I just stopped buying. I used to buy stocks regularly. I just sort of dollar cost average into the stock market, particularly US equities. I just gradually stopped sending that money over to Hargreaves Lansdown or wherever I was buying it. And it wasn't like a conscious choice. I just thought, I'm actually not going to send any to Hargreaves this time. I don't know if I'm going to buy Bitcoin yet. But I remember very clearly that property business I have with my friend Ash. We were renovating the house. We were in there together. I listened to a podcast while I was in the room where I know the boiler is, and I was working in that room a lot. And I remember just stopping one day, listening to some Bitcoin podcast, probably What Bitcoin Did, I imagine, and just being like, no, it was before What Bitcoin Did. But anyway, Bitcoin podcast. And I just thought, flipping heck, if this is true, this is truth. Like I just know that everything that I've listened to in this podcast about Bitcoin lines up perfectly with what I'm experiencing about the stock market, and that it's gambling, and that you can't beat the market, and that, only the rich can get richer in that situation. And I would just stop on the site, listening to the podcast, get on my phone, sweep the money into Coinbase, and just smash buy Bitcoin with all the spare cash that I had. And then I get a message from my wife being like, oh my God, we've been scammed. Like, there's no money in our bank. I'd be like, it's very often that would happen. She would very often be like, what's this payment? And I'd say, don't worry. She's like, it's Bitcoin, isn't it? We're like, yeah, it's Bitcoin. She's like, that's a lot. It's a lot you're putting in. It wasn't a lot really in the grand scheme of things, but to us, it felt like a lot. And, I'm so grateful for that time that I had, because I really was, I wasn't very clever in the way I dollar cost averaged, and I probably could have played the markets better. But when you're buying Bitcoin back then, who cares? And it's the same now, really. It's like, when Bitcoin's at $1 million in 8-10 years time, are you going to care whether you bought it at 78,000 or 98,000? No, you're not. I don't even know what my entry price was. I wasn't taking note of that. I just knew that my conviction was going up, and I was just deciding, this is it. This is it. I've landed on the thing. And why should I be working my ass off as a plumber, killing myself, doing a dangerous job where I'm working with gas and risking my potential going to jail? I was a good gas engineer, so I've never done anything dodgy to anyone. But, I was there working hard, using my body to make money. I shouldn't have to go home in my evenings and learn how to be a stockbroker that beats these guys on Wall Street. I shouldn't have to do that. I'm adding a lot of value here to the world. I should just be able to take what I get paid by my customers, who are grateful that I've switched their heating back on, and put it into something that's going to be worth something in 20 years time. And then once I can't work anymore, I should just be able to chill. And it all just added up for me. And whenever I got greater conviction, I would just send it all to Coinbase and just buy more Bitcoin.
So did you also sell down some of your other investments, or did you kind of leave them where they were, but then all the new available cash you just kept piling in?
Yeah. At that time, I just left it in Hargreaves Lansdown, because it's really tax inefficient to bring it out again. But since then, I was just talking to my dad. I'm at my parents' house now because it's half term. But just talking to my dad, and we're discussing the Bitcoin price, and he said, "Oh, how are your other investments doing?" I was like, "I don't have any other investments." He's like, "What about your stocks and shares? You used to be so good at buying and selling stocks." I was like, "Gone, mate." And he was like, "Not in Bitcoin." It's like, yes, all in Bitcoin. Everything's in Bitcoin now. Anything is in Bitcoin now. I think I've got a tiny bit of Coinbase and Smarter Web Company in my pension fund, which I don't know when I started it, but I haven't got very much in it. But you can't take that out really, so I just bought that. So basically Bitcoin as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can't remember when I sold off stocks, just gradually, probably over the last 2 years. I think buying Bitcoin probably at quite a high price, but just don't have any anymore. No need to even log into Hargreaves Lansdown.
So have you sold that plumbing business now, or did you just wind it down and move on to other things, or what's the story?
Yeah. So yeah, I sold it over a year ago now, December 2024 or January 2025. I got the last payment for it. One of the reasons I sold it was because the more I understood about Bitcoin, the more I just thought, I just really want to work in this space. I want to do something in this space. I want to connect with more people in this space. Yeah, we had an idea that we would go traveling with our kids, do some travel with them, take them out of school. So it all kind of timed together. And I listened to I watched the What's the Problem video, the Joe Bryan video, which I'm sure so many people have seen who listen to this. And there's a bit where I think he says, or it might have even been on your podcast, where he says, once you understand Bitcoin, you realize that it's just inevitable, that Bitcoin is just this coming tidal wave, which is everybody's going to have to get on and ride. And I think that made me realize the place that I got to with the plumbing business, it was so fiat mindset based, so competitive with other guys in the area who are in the same space as me. And it's also a little bit dodgy as well. You're kind of working with estate agents and nobody really trusts the estate agent. And, you've got a contract. And basically what I sold was the sort of contracts with estate agents. But I'm just so happy to be out of that because it's not a safe foundation to be on, really, because you're working with this estate agent going, well, and then one day you're not getting any calls from the estate agent anymore to go to their rental properties. And they've got hundreds and hundreds, so it's constant work, and you hire one person, another plumber, to work with you to take on more. And then suddenly you don't get a phone call from the agent anymore. That's funny. A few days go by. Then you call up and say, hey, it's Myles here. Haven't any calls from you. They're like, oh, right, who's your contract with? I'm like, it's with you. And I say, who do you normally speak to? I'm like, I'm going to talk to Brian. They're like, oh, yeah, Brian's left. He's gone to another agency. What? What do you mean? I've still got my contract with you. They're like, nah, sorry, probably going to use someone else now. I'm like, right. So it's like that, is it? And they're like, yeah, unless you want to come in and see us. And that means, unless you want to come in with a brown envelope with 10 grand in cash, then you can get the contract again for all their rental properties and all their gas safeties. So it's so shaky and a little bit sketchy. Yeah. So the short story is, yes, I exited it, but I think I just got into a place with that business where if I was going to start again, which I may do one day, I would just go much more low key. I wouldn't hire people. I would just work by myself and maybe have an apprentice. I just feel like Bitcoin is inevitable, and I'll probably just become the Bitcoin plumber and would just be like, I only really want to work in something if I've got a shot at restarting a career in Bitcoin, start a business in Bitcoin. I'm a non-technical person, but something in the Bitcoin space is what I just decided. This is a growth sector, and there's one of the only growth sectors in the UK, unless you're working in AI or tech. I think Bitcoin's the only growth sector that I can see, and I want to be in it. It's just the only thing I find interesting that gets me buzzing. And so that's kind of why I exited the plumbing business. But obviously, if I've got to put food on the table, I'll go and change someone's tap or unblock their toilet. But at the moment, I just looking for the next thing and seeing what's next, really.
The number of the network growth of Bitcoin is astronomical, and there are Bitcoin jobs, but they're few and far between. It's not like there's a Bitcoin economy and you can you can apply to be a Bitcoin plumber, for example, or if you've got a certain set of skills, it's just not. You could accept payment in Bitcoin, and so de facto you're working in the Bitcoin space. But again, that's such a niche of a niche of a niche that you would never find enough clients that would be willing to pay you in Bitcoin if you're a Bitcoin plumber. So it's a difficult one, isn't it? I think there's a lot of Bitcoiners, me, you, plenty of others who would be very open and willing and able to commit to working in Bitcoin, but it's still, to use the cliche, it's still so early, isn't it? And unless you're a CFO and you can work for a business that wants a Bitcoin officer, and you've got you've got enough experience in TradFi world and can bridge the gap and all the rest of it. But again, that's still quite niche. That's not. So it's difficult, isn't it, to leave a sort of fiat mining job to really fully go into Bitcoin. I mean, you do your podcast, I do my podcast. I mean, mine. I'm assuming it's the same for you. My podcast costs me money. It doesn't earn me anything.
Yeah,
totally. I do it because I love talking to Bitcoiners. Me and Jace do the conference. We're doing Pizza Day. All of that is we cross our fingers and hope we sell enough tickets and maybe get a bit of sponsorship to cover all the cost of running the event. It's not a job. we love doing it, but it's not. I couldn't quit my job because
Yeah.
I still need money to put food on the table.
Yeah. I'm basically just riding. I mean, I got a decent payment when I sold the business. I can't retire. It's not like I can exit the world and just go on an island or anything, but it's given me a bit of breathing space. So I sort of have this whimsical notion that, I might, something will come up and I'd love to start a business in the Bitcoin space doing something, but I don't really know if it has to be a technical business or if it's something I can use physical skills to try and create a product that Bitcoiners would buy. I really have no idea. And especially when the price is down. Oh my gosh, Christmas is a thing. Well, the price was pretty good at Christmas, but now when you see family members, they're like, "Oh, how's your little Bitcoin thing going? You should have stuck to being a plumber, shouldn't you? All plumbers earn a lot of money these days. Now it's protected against AI." I'm like, yeah, I know. When you're sort of really second guessing whether I made a good choice or not. But I don't know. I've got a bit of space for a little while, and I'm really happy to just like deliver value to people who listen to this kind of content and through my podcast and speaking to other people. Maybe something will come up, but if it doesn't, it's actually not a bad gig being a plumber. And maybe I'll just like crush loads more content while I'm out there. Maybe I'll come up with some kind of content plan for like the Bitcoin plumber in people's houses, or I don't know. But I'm really enjoying this little period I've got now to be able to do stuff like this, probably just for a little bit longer.
I think that's a really healthy outlook as well, because you're not pinning all your hopes on some kind of Bitcoin pipe dream
Yeah.
of employment.
Yeah.
If it comes to it, you've still got a skill set that you're prepared to use and you can earn money from.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's great. Back to your point of you referenced listening to Joe Bryan and him saying, Bitcoin is a tidal wave and it will just consume everything. And do you 100% believe that? Or do you have some doubts, is maybe too strong a word, but are there any chinks in the conviction armor that you've got? And do you ever consider that us kind of hardcore Bitcoiners live in a little bit of a bubble, as much as we sometimes will poo-poo, articles we read in the FT with very good reason because they're so badly written and, incorrect. At the same time, outsiders looking into people like us often will say, like, well, you're all just, it's a bit of a insiders club and you're all just kind of propping it up yourselves and you're all telling each other what you want to hear. How do you reflect on that?
Yeah. I mean, I think it would be sort of, is it intellectually dishonest if I said, "Oh, I never doubt Bitcoin ever. I never have any doubts about it." When the price is down like it is now, when I used to calculate how long I can keep going for before I have to start working again, I'm not sold my Bitcoin stack or never sold any of it, but you calculate in your head, worst case scenario, I could sell a bit of Bitcoin. But when the price is down like it is now, you're like, there's no way I'm selling Bitcoin at this level. I'm buying Bitcoin. And actually, when the price is down, my fiat stack is going down faster than I was planning for it to go down, because I'm using a load of the money that I got paid for the business to buy more Bitcoin. When I said that I wouldn't do that, I would use that to live and like pay for living expenses. But it's too good when the price is down where it is now. So I think I definitely am putting my money where my mouth is and saying, selling that property, I'm going to try and buy more Bitcoin with that as well. I must believe it pretty aggressively. Either that or I'm totally deluded and I'm chucking like serious amounts of money into this thing, that magic internet money that we don't think is going to go anywhere. But I think probably what I understand better than some people who are new into the market is that I've been here before and I've felt like a genius when the price is up, and I've felt like an idiot when the price is down. And it's very hard when everyone around you is questioning and saying, what's going on with this Bitcoin thing when the price is down? Remember in the last cycle when Bitcoin hit 69K, in the run up to that, I was saying to loads of people, guys, you should buy some Bitcoin. You should just buy a bit. And a friend of mine screenshotted a group chat that he was in, and there are a bunch of people in there. They're all vicars in the Church of England in this group chat. And a bunch of them, they probably need to ask forgiveness, but they were just cussing me out in this group chat, being like, Myles thinks he's so clever, this guy who's bought Bitcoin. And they're like, no. And then they were all giving their opinion about Bitcoin, like they know anything about Bitcoin, these guys. And they're all giving their opinion about it. And my friend very kindly said, I think Myles might actually be onto something here because I've bought a bit. And then he was sending me some of the messages, and mostly people didn't know anything. But then the price ran up to like nearly 70K. And he then said, oh, I'm up like 200% on Miles's tip to buy Bitcoin. None of them were saying anything. They're all quiet. They didn't say anything. But when the price went down again, then they're all there. And it's the same in the mainstream media. They're all saying, oh, now does Myles Dhillon think he's really clever? I'm not even in this group chat. You're all just cussing me out like in there. But what I realized, that group chat is the same. It's a small echo chamber, which is the same as the wider news media. No one in that group, and I think there's like 30 people in it, knows anything about Bitcoin. They didn't spend any time studying it. They've just seen some news headlines. The only person who knows anything is my friend who is in that group, and he bought Bitcoin. He's held it up to this point now as well. And I think it's the same. And that kind of gives me conviction. It makes me realize the very loud voice of 29 people saying Bitcoin's trash when the price goes down. And they don't say, oh, Bitcoin's great when the price goes up. None of them have spent any time studying it or really understanding it. And me and my friend who's in that group are the only two who have spent time studying it. And I think it's the same with the mainstream media. Most 99% of the people writing those articles have not spent time digging in and understanding Bitcoin, or even understanding what fiat money is, or why inflation is higher than the government says it is, or how we managed to get this country out of a mess during COVID. We just printed the crap out of money. So I think I'm sort of building myself up now, even saying this. And to answer the question, yeah, I do think Bitcoin is a tidal wave that's going in the direction that we're all surfing, and everyone's going to get swept up in it, because so far I've not met anyone who spends enough time looking into Bitcoin, even people who are really skeptical. I've got a friend he's a pretty wealthy guy, just moved to Singapore, and we saw him while we were traveling around. And I would put him in the category of like really astute boomer investor. Like, he's done really well. He's had a great job, but he's also invested so well in various things. And he's buying Bitcoin now. He's trying to get 10% of his net worth into Bitcoin. Now, the only difference between him and the other 29 people in that group is that he's taken time to study Bitcoin. He also likes gold as well. And he's like, his last message to me was saying, like, I put Bitcoin in the same category as gold. It's the debasement trade. That's the difference. And I think that's what makes me feel pretty confident about Bitcoin, is anyone who has half a brain, who understands a little bit about money, who spends some time studying it or understanding it, they don't normally turn away from it. They normally, even if they're very skeptical, like he's still skeptical, but he's putting 10% in. He's like, I just think it's a good concept. There's something about it. So I'm going to put 10% of my assets into it. I'm trying to build up to 10%. So I just feel that it's more to do with how much time you spend learning about it. And when you do, most of the time, people have their head turned at least a bit.
Yeah, I agree. And I think even for those that close out some positions or whatever, like Luke Groman recently said he sold a whole load of his Bitcoin. But I think even for people like him, that's more the trader in them that's coming out. It's not like they necessarily don't believe in Bitcoin anymore. It's not like they're suddenly saying, actually, Bitcoin's one big Ponzi scheme and it's going to go to zero.
Yeah.
They're just saying, actually, I'm going to take some of my net worth that is doing very well in Bitcoin, and I'm going to allocate it somewhere else that I think for a period of time is going to do better. And let's be honest, if we'd all done that in October, we would, and then traded back in now, we'd have, almost twice as much Bitcoin as we had in October. But, again, it's trading is a profession, is a career, is posh gambling, basically.
Yeah.
I've
done it.
It's not for the average.
I've done it. In previous cycles, I've tried to do it. And it's actually my wife that saves me in this cycle and the last cycle from selling Bitcoin. I mean, when Donald Trump was elected, and we just saw like the Trump run up before he was elected, he said he was going to support Bitcoin. He spoke at that Bitcoin conference and everybody got excited. I was starting to say to my wife, okay, Bitcoin is going over 100K soon. What should we do? She was like, but I thought you really believe in Bitcoin. I was like, yeah, of course I do. She said, so why are you selling it? I'm like, I don't know. It just might be smart financially to sell some. She keeps me a bit grounded, because she said, when you tried to do that when it hit 20,000 and you sold it, and then it carried on going up, and then you had to buy back at a different price. So I have tried to do it, but when I understood less about Bitcoin, I end up with slightly less in Bitcoin terms than I did at the start. So then I have to I have to do that thing where I sweep our money
Yeah.
into it more.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm just not good enough to try and trade it. And when the price can run up, it goes up in like a week. It shoots up and goes crazy. Then you miss it. And I'm just not good enough trader. Well done to Luke Roman, but I just couldn't do it. As soon as I sold it, I'd be stressed, being like, oh my gosh, when should I buy back? When should I buy back?
Yeah, I think for me, a lot of it is a psychological approach. You have to ask yourself. So let's go back to October when it's 125K.
Yeah.
If you and I had been talking then, and I'd said to you, right, Myles, how are you going to feel if you sold some of your Bitcoin now and it went up to 200,000? And how are you going to feel if you sold some now and it went down to 60,000? I think asking yourself that question, if what you do, if you sold some and it went up to 200 and you said, well, actually I could do with some cash at the moment because we're spending money on improving our lives. So actually, if it did fly up to 200, as long as I haven't sold it all, I'd be fine with that. Then I think it depends on the stage of your life, what else you might need money for, because ultimately, if you need access to some of the funds that you've got sitting in Bitcoin for whatever reason, life happens, then having to sell now when it's at the price it is as a Bitcoiner would be pretty painful, wouldn't it? Because deep down, it's gonna go back up to at least an all-time high at whatever period of time you think.
Yeah, I mean, I've sold Bitcoin when we bought the last house we lived in. So funny, like we just, everything goes into the house when you buy it, right? You got nothing left. And after you get the stamp duty bill and the solicitor's bill at the end of it, you're like, flipping heck, it's cost us like 10 grand more than I thought it would in my head. So then you're completely rinsed out, not of the money you've set aside to buy the house, but you're also rinsed out of your current account as well, because you've used your current account balance to pay for all the other things that happen, like the moving costs and everything, all that stuff. We're rinsed out. And in the first week when we were there, I was doing work to the house anyway, making it nice before we moved in. But the first week, my wife's dad came round and we were going around the house and he was like, oh, if you're sleeping in this room, which bathroom would you use? And I was like, oh, you have to go down the stairs to that one. He was like, oh, no, that's no good. And I was like, what do you mean? He's thinking for me, when I come and stay here, the bathroom's too far away. I want to go to it.
Yeah.
He said, you could put a bathroom here. He said, you could do a bathroom. You're a plumber. You could put a bathroom in. I was like, yeah, I could do. But it was a fourth floor extension in a conservation area. It was like bloody complicated, scaffolding really high up. But I just was like, yeah, you're right. I probably should put a bathroom in. He's like, you should do it now while the house is a mess rather than, once you moved in. And I was like, no, I haven't got any money. So I sold some Bitcoin to do the extension. And, that extension cost me like £500,000 or something in today's money. So I've experienced it, and I don't want to go there again. And my wife reminds me of it, that even if, I'm looking at my fiat bank balance now and I'm thinking I probably should be looking at working in the next 6 months, going back to doing plumbing and getting back into that industry again is not as bad as selling Bitcoin now at all. It's actually great. I love working. I love being busy. It's not as bad as selling Bitcoin now and then looking in 5 years' time and thinking, I've done it again. I've done it again. I spent one Bitcoin to live on for a year and I could have lived on that for 10 years in 8 years forward. So that does kind of keep me from making short-term choices that will improve my life in the next couple of years compared to long-term. We've got kids. So I just think about the kids and think, I don't want to be that meme where it's, dad sold Bitcoin and, he used to have a whole coin, and the kids are saying, whoa, how did you get a whole Bitcoin? And I'm like, yeah, granddad used to have a whole Bitcoin, but he sold it to pay for a holiday to Corfu. No, man, I don't want to be that guy.
I think it's an interesting thing to consider, though, that following that logic in your grandkids' lifetime, someone who's got 0.01 Bitcoin or, imagine getting to 0.1 Bitcoin, you're like so rich. So it's like, well, at what point in one's life do you say, I've got enough and actually now I can use Bitcoin to improve my life? I mean, you're a lot younger than me. I'm now getting closer to the point where I think at a point where Bitcoin could rip, I'm open to selling some so that I
Hmm.
can step back from working and not retire in the traditional sense, but doing a bit of what you're doing now, committing more time and
Yeah.
energy into Bitcoin and other things that I want to do in my life rather than just fiat
Yeah.
mining. But
Yeah.
I think it's often not talked about enough in Bitcoin circles. It's almost like a dirty phrase, selling your Bitcoin. But actually, what's the point in just holding it forever and then dying
Yeah.
and passing it on to your kids? Like, you've
Yeah.
got to enjoy it.
No.
You've got to enjoy your
No,
life.
no. And then now we're getting into the stuff that we said we might talk about, which is kind of my position on eternity and faith. I run the Faith and Bitcoin meetup in London. And yeah, I mean, you're right. I'm not going to hold it forever. I want to pass on a bit to our children because I do feel like it's that generational wealth that I don't think anything else is going to be able to come close to handing on some Bitcoin to your children. Is going to be better than anything. Handing on a house is a pain in the ass if you hand it on to your children. But yeah, it's that mix between could our lives be measurably better if I sold some Bitcoin now? And I think that's probably the question I'm going to keep asking for the next 8 years. I mean, we could, like, we don't have anywhere to live right now. Like me and my wife, we're renting somewhere in London, and it's not a long-term place to stay because we've been traveling, we've been all around Asia, sold the business, rented the house out, got the kids out of school, and we're going traveling again in a couple of weeks. And it's like, I know at some point we're going to have to buy a house or rent a proper full house to live in. So I'm always asking that question. If I sold X now, flat in East London or some Bitcoin now, how much happier or secure or stable is that going to make our children? And I think when it crosses an axis where it's like, no, we do need to sell Bitcoin because the way our children feel and the schools they want to go to is being affected by my inability to be able to swallow selling Bitcoin. That is the crossover when I think I'll start taking some profit. But I'll probably still be saying to everyone, guys, we're going to rent for another 3 more years because I just don't want to sell any Bitcoin right now. So I think I would probably still push back for the time being. Bitcoin's got to be at like 200-300K before I'm deciding to sell any, really, before it starts becoming a thing where I think, okay, I could sell some Bitcoin and that'll make a big difference to our lives. But I'm happy to carry on for the time being. Sorry, I think I went off topic there, mate.
Yeah, no, you didn't at all. And if you're looking at places to live, I can thoroughly recommend Bury St Edmunds. It's a beautiful part of the country.
I'm gonna bring the kids and Bex to the pizza day. We're gonna rent
Brilliant.
somewhere in the town. Yeah, I'm gonna rent somewhere. Like I said, we should just stay in a little Airbnb somewhere in the actual town because it's such a nice little place. So I think we'll come up on Thursday evening, spend the night, and then hang out there on Saturday a little bit. But yeah, it's a
Fantastic.
nice spot. It's a nice spot. I really like it up there.
When you're looking at Bitcoin in the UK or even globally and how things have moved on since your initial interest in Bitcoin all those years ago, what do you see the biggest things that might happen in the next 6, 9, 12, 18 months? How do you look at how things are going to progress?
Well, I'm sort of still holding my breath for a proper strategic Bitcoin reserve. I think I'm slightly disappointed with America's way they've gone about it. I think when they announced it, I thought this is going to be fantastic. They're going to go for it. I was thinking it's going to pump my bags as well. But I also believed that they were going to be that new country entrepreneurial spirit where they were just going to go for it. And I sort of feel a bit disappointed. I'm like, come on, guys, you're ahead on every area technologically across the world. We think, maybe they're competing with China in some areas, but you've announced that you're going to be ahead on the Bitcoin thing, but you haven't really followed through completely. You're going to hold the stuff you confiscated, but it didn't quite go as far as Bitcoiners wanted it. And I just feel a bit disappointed because I thought that, whatever you think about Donald Trump, he's a kind of gun-ho, go for it sort of guy. And I thought he was going to go for it with making Bitcoin purchases happen. So now I'm like, okay, fine. You're not going to be the Bitcoin nation we thought you were going to be. Who's going to do it? And I think probably more likely to be, I'm holding my breath over the next 6 to 18 months for it to be more of a developing nation that maybe doesn't have such a good currency in their own country. Probably one of those countries that uses the what's it called? It's the franc. Those African nations that used to be colonies of France, which still use the currency, which is managed and operated by France, and printed in France. And it would be one of those places that just decide, you know what, peace out, we're done with being run by France's monetary system. We're going to start using Bitcoin. I'm looking forward to when something like that happens. And I feel like it's just a matter of time. And I don't think that will cause the price to go bananas like it would if America said we've actually sold gold and bought Bitcoin. But I do think for me, that would make me realize, okay, there's some people there studying Bitcoin. They've understood it and they're going to be ahead of the game. And they're going to be one of the new global superpowers in the future. I sort of feel like El Salvador as well will be one of the new global superpowers based on the Bitcoin that they're buying all the time. So I think that's what I'm quite excited about in terms of like global politics. Or, does something come out where we find out that China has been buying Bitcoin for ages, or I don't know, even somewhere that we don't like as much, like Iran or Russia, have they been building a strategic Bitcoin reserve? And then that then causes this race between the nations to think, flipping it, we better get some more Bitcoin as well. I think that's still coming. I think probably weird Bitcoiners generally are super optimistic people. And I love that about the Bitcoin community. And at your conference that I came to last year, that's what I love about meeting other Bitcoiners, is they are really optimistic. And I don't think I'm going to change my position or like roll back my optimism, because I think it's kind of boring to be down on things and think the stuff is going to happen slower than you think. Probably my optimism I'm always predicting the price is going to go higher than it does. Like I was in the 100K gang when it hit 69 in the last cycle. And I'm always predicting the price is going to go higher than it did in each cycle. But I just feel like Bitcoiners are drawn to optimism. So maybe it won't get adopted by a country in the next 6 or 18 months, but maybe in 4 years, then I'll be like, okay, no, I was right, just wrong on the timing.
I went to Bitcoin Prague 2025 and I absolutely loved it. It's back again. If you're looking at going, use code GaryBTC at checkout for 10% off your tickets. Yeah, I think the other curse that a lot of Bitcoiners are blessed with is they think Bitcoin is going to do great things, much greater and much quicker than actually materialize. And they typically think that the current system is going to implode and crash a lot harder and a lot worse and a lot faster than it actually does. So I agree. I think living life being optimistic is the best way to live life, right? Because life's too short, and I think we manifest things as well. So like you may as well be trying to manifest great things, because there's more chance that might happen. But I do also find it interesting that sometimes it comes up conversations about having a pension, and a group of Bitcoiners will go, well, the government are going to take that away. That will be worth nothing by the time you retire. Yeah, but will it though? It might be worth a bit less. They might change the tax rules, and the tax-free withdrawal you can make might be capped or reduced. But I think it's pretty unlikely that I'm 50, so in 7 years' time, for things to have literally imploded and the government has come and taken everything out of my pension. If that happens, Bitcoin's probably going to be 10 million a coin by then, because the world will be so fucked up. If they come in for little old my pension, then what the hell's gone wrong with everything else? I find that quite interesting.
I think if stuff continues at the same rate that it is now, I don't think it's going to get so bad that it's apocalyptic. I think probably that what we can't see, which is coming, is everything people talk about with AI and the replacement of kind of blue collar jobs. I think that is a black swan cascade that I don't think it's possible for people like us to be able to understand or predict what's going on. I think imagine if just driverless cars and driverless vehicles become so autonomous that a taxi driver is just a job which doesn't exist anymore. I really think that's going to happen. They're getting so good. Even like the train strikes, right? When there were guys doing the train strikes, and in London we had the tube strikes like before Christmas, and there were videos going around on social media, people taking a video through the window of the tube driver, and the tube driver was operating the tube like forward and backwards while he had a YouTube video playing there on the side. And you're like, mate, your job is already at risk and you're taking the piss by watching a video while you're operating the tube. It's so easy. You just do this and you press the button to open and close the doors. That is a job that should already be automated away. And the only thing that's keeping those jobs safe is the unions, right? And really, it's scary. The more people strike in those kind of jobs, the quicker they're going to get automated out. But I don't think we are understanding that even if we just have all of the taxi drivers and the delivery drivers in this country unemployed, that will almost double the unemployment rate right now, which is a massive burden on the state. And where are they going to get that money from to pay for people who are unemployed? They're going to print it, not because I want them to. That's just based on the evidence and the history. Governments in those situations, they bail out and they print money. They'll say to the taxi driver union, okay, we'll just print a load of money and give it to you guys, like we did in furlough. We'll just send it to people, to their bank accounts. So I think that actually is more, I would say, more realistic for the way the world is going to go, rather than we're just going to slowly trickle down and they're going to start taking pensions and they won't exist anymore. I think there has to be a real reason why they do that, because they want to keep it ticking over for as long as they can. But yeah, I think even in that scenario, Bitcoin is still the trade. Protect yourself from it.
Yeah, definitely. And of course, if you've got trapped capital sitting in a pension, there's nothing else I can do with it anyway. So if Rachel Reeves wants to come and change the rules tomorrow and say we're taking 50% of everyone's pension, I mean, I don't really have a choice in that anyway.
No,
There's only one thing you can really. Bitcoin in self custody is much harder, in most cases impossible, for anyone to come and take from you. Yeah, I think there's a lot of things there that just so many unknowns around AI. I mean, even in the last couple of weeks, some of the Claudebot things, and like, it's all just absolutely mental and moving at such a pace, moving at such a fast pace.
Yeah.
Even people like us that, let's be generous and say we're slightly above average intelligence, which might be true. Other opinions may vary, but I'll certainly put you in that bracket anyway. But even, like, I'm sure there'll be so many things in the next few years, which we couldn't even have we couldn't have conceptualized that might have happened, and yet it has. I mean, obviously you use the example of autonomous trains or cars and stuff. That stuff we can fairly easily conceptualize, and to some extent is partly here, partly coming. But there'll be so many other things where, like, we can't even imagine what it would be like now. It'd be like trying to say to someone 80 years ago, tell us what the world might look like in 80 years. Difference now is that 80 years worth of progression that we've had in the last 80 years might only take 8 months or 12 months or a couple of years to materialize, because of how quickly things move.
Yeah. I think it's fair to say that, from my experience of speaking to Bitcoiners, they're a bit more switched on to Bitcoin and AI. They're in the same space, aren't they? They're in the same kind of, you have to be thinking ahead if you want to really understand AI or think about AI. So I think the general pleb in public, they have no idea what's coming. I mean, the guy who owned the restaurant below where our property we used to own is, he's a taxi driver and he inherited the restaurant from his dad, and then he's rented it out to someone else. I was saying to him, like, only a year ago I saw him. I said, he's younger than me. He's probably like 31 or 2 or something. I said, mate, you're going to be a taxi driver for your whole career? Like, what are you planning? He was like, yeah, it's good. It's good money. It's flexible. And I was like, mate, there's no way you're going to be a taxi driver in 30 years' time. It's not possible. And he was like, nah, people always want a driver to help them. I was like, no, mate, like, you need another plan. Like, you might be fine for 5 years at the most. 10 years? What are you going to be? 42? There's no way you're still going to be a taxi driver. And if there are a few, there's going to be a couple, and it will be private drivers. It's not going to be like, I'll just call a taxi. And he was like, nah, mate, you're wrong. I was like, all right, cool. But I think that's most people's positions. Most people outside of Bitcoin and AI, just not willing to understand or listen to that something is coming, and they don't want to make another plan. So I feel like Bitcoiners are ahead, but there's a black swan event coming that we can't predict what is going to happen and the impact it's going to have on our economies and also on the price of Bitcoin.
Yeah, yeah. The other thing I did want to touch on with you, Myles, is the interest in the faith side of your life and how that relates to Bitcoin. As I said to you previously, I'm an atheist, but I still consider myself a kind of spiritual person. But I'm interested to know how those worlds kind of overlap for you and where you see similarities maybe with what Bitcoin delivers with your faith.
Yeah. So I became a Christian, started following the Christian faith when I was 16 or 17 years old. And I think most people, if you're a Bitcoiner, it's already a given that the fiat system is immoral. We understand how inflation works, and it's sort of stealing capital from the general public. And I think even if you are an atheist and you don't believe in God, there's kind of a moral code or a moral law, and everybody would agree that theft is immoral. Like, you shouldn't just steal something from someone, because when you steal, like if I stole your laptop from you, that would have an impact on your ability to be able to spend the rest of your money on food and accommodation and other stuff that you like to do with your family, because you'd have to then allocate some more money to buying a new laptop, because that's kind of essential for you to live and do your work. We would all agree that that has an impact. But we all know that inflation is stealing in the same way, but in a more insidious way, from our bank accounts. When governments create money or banks create new loans, it takes a little bit of money from our purchasing power. Even if you're not a Christian, everybody knows one of the 10 commandments is thou shalt not steal. It's the basic tenet of a Christian belief system. You shouldn't steal from other people for the reasons that I was just saying, because you know it has a negative impact on other people. And I think if you're a Christian, once you understand that, you realize that it's not actually, forget the love of money is the root of all evil. It's another really well-known Bible verse. It's actually, hang on, what if it's not the love of money? That's the first thing. Like, we shouldn't be so obsessed with money that it causes us to do depraved things and steal from people. What if the actual money itself is evil and causes people to do evil stuff, like steal from other people? If you're a Christian, you understand that. And as soon as you realize that, it starts making you feel a little bit dirty whenever you're using the fiat system. Like, I actually feel guilty that this flat I was saying I'm selling in London, I've done nothing clever to benefit from the rise in property there. All I did was buy it and get a massive mortgage, take my money out of it, and just do nothing. They created money from nothing and they gave it to me to buy this property. And I've just ridden a wave of inflation, and I'm going to sell it and end up with more money than I did before. I didn't create any value. I've never renovated that flat. I've done nothing to it. I actually feel that that's a bit wrong. Like, I shouldn't do that. I'm happy when I do plumbing work for people, when I add value to their lives and they pay me for the value that I create because their house is warm again in the middle of winter. It feels great, but it doesn't feel good once I know how the fiat money system works, that because I'm going to benefit from the sale of that property, someone else has been locked out of being able to buy a property in that area, and they probably work hard doing a job like I do. It feels a little bit wrong and a little bit immoral. I think if you're a person who has faith, if you're a person who has Christian faith, it's almost you have to be open to the problems in the world, and that they may be, a large number of the problems may be being created through the money system that we're forced to use. And really, is there a better way that could actually make the world better, cause people to be more affluent, have a better living standard? And are we actually perpetuating a sinful, a horrible way to operate the world economically? And if you're a Christian, I feel like you have a moral duty to be able to look into what is money, and is it concurrent with my belief system that I want to love my neighbor? And if it's not, you really need to take some time out and think, okay, you're reading your Bible, you're going to church, you're practicing your faith. The thing that we're using the whole time, this money, if there's something wrong with it and it's causing kind of depraved behavior, shouldn't Christians be the first people to be looking into Bitcoin above people who don't believe in this moral code which they're trying to follow? And I would argue, yes, it is time. We should be looking into it. because we're sort of professing that we believe in this good God and we want to love our neighbors, but we're using this money system that's actually causing the people around us to be disadvantaged in some way. So it's kind of like, I really care about it. And I sort of feel like I'm on a bit of a mission, but I do feel like I'm a bit of a crazy, nearly add in Bitcoiner, bit crazy, Christian, bit crazy. Like it adds another level of craziness to me when I'm talking to people.
So do you find when you're talking to non-Bitcoiners, normies, do you think a Christian, given for all those reasons you've just explained, is more open to understanding and embracing what Bitcoin is than someone who's very fiat-minded and not religious? Is there some kind of
Yeah.
correlation there that you've experienced?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think there is. I think if someone is a Christian and they are professing that worldview and that's a sort of really core belief that they have, I'm finding it easier to talk to those people about Bitcoin because it's an element that it's an element of Bitcoin, which I believe is true, that it's a different angle to attack someone on the orange pill crusade, right? And it's quite easy to say to someone that, those points I've just made, at least to get them interested in understanding Bitcoin. And it can kind of wipe away all of the other FUD ideas they've got about Bitcoin, that it's used by criminals and that it's a Ponzi scheme. I feel like I can sidestep a lot of those questions that normies have and go straight in for the morality of money. And
Yep.
it's immoral to be using the fiat system and to be perpetuating it. It gets them on the thought process a little bit quicker, I think.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's something that hadn't really occurred to me before, but and it's often said there isn't one approach to try and educate someone on what Bitcoin is. That you have to meet them where they are on their journey. But yeah, I just think that the moral element of what our current financial system is, if you can tap into that to someone who has those fundamental Christian beliefs, and it doesn't have to be, morality isn't exclusive for religious people, is it? Like, there will be atheists who share similar moral beliefs, even though they may not
Yeah.
believe in God. They might be slightly
Yeah.
different, but yeah, I just think that's a really interesting thought that, certain people can have that different life view that might make them embrace Bitcoin coming from a very different angle that isn't just number go up, or you can, you can retire sooner, or you can create more wealth. It's actually, this current system is morally wrong. There is something that ticks all the boxes for, being available to everyone. You can't be unbanked. You can't, in all of these things that matter to the average person, but probably resonate even harder with someone who has very strong Christian and moral beliefs.
Yeah. 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 And then the other element that I talk to Christians about is that if you are a Christian and you sort of tapped into global news, there's a terrible sort of persecution of Christians in Nigeria right now, in Christian churches. Nigeria is a very divided country. There's like Muslims on one end and Christians on the other end, and where those communities are crossing over, there's a very I think it's going both ways, to be honest. I don't think everyone's behaving perfectly, but there's a lot of persecution of Christian churches in Nigeria right now and being set on fire and people being awful killings, but it doesn't get into mainstream media, but Christians do talk about it quite a lot, I've noticed. And one of the things I've been saying to people is, in these scenarios, you're trying to flee your country and you're a genuine refugee trying to go to another place which is safe for you. What do you do if your whole life is based in Nigeria, in a rural place, and you've been farming and going to church for 3 generations and you've built up some assets that your grandparents, it's all working together? What do you do if you suddenly, the next village has been burned down and you're like, let's get out of here? You can't take your stuff with you. And I've been saying to people around, that I speak to about it, I'm like, these people need to know about Bitcoin, and we should be sending, if we're supporting those places, we should be sending Bitcoin. What's the point of sending money to their bank account if they're leaving the country and they're never going to be able to access it again?
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah,
another
absolutely.
side that I start talking to people about.
Yeah. And the other thing that sprung to mind as you were kind of telling your story there is, there's a lot of talk about businesses embracing Bitcoin for their balance sheet.
Mm.
What about some PR around the first church that would have a Bitcoin treasury? And I don't mean like accepting donations in the
Yeah.
and every from the parishioners every week in Bitcoin, but
Yeah.
it's not inconceivable that a church could say we are going to convert 50% of our donations to Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Do you think
Well,
that's something that could happen?
it's definitely coming. I'm like building an organization at the moment called Faith and Bitcoins. The website's faithandbitcoin.com. And that's a group of us who are Christians who believe in Bitcoin. And the guy called James, I don't know if you know him, he's from Bridge to Bitcoin. He's
Oh,
orange
yeah, Jack,
pilled a
yeah,
couple of
James, yeah,
churches. Yeah, I do. Yeah.
yeah, it's
He's
a great
orange
guy.
pilled a few churches. There's a church coming out soon, and they're having a day in April where they're speaking on Sunday, announcing that they're accepting Bitcoin as donations, and they're Bitcoiners, and they're promoting themselves as the first church in the UK to accept Bitcoin. But the church that we meet in on a Monday for the Faith and Bitcoin gathering, the guy who opens the doors for us and lets us come into the cafe area, at the second meetup, he was like, "Oh, I've got this." And he had a QR code for a Lightning wallet. So actually, that church, they listened to us talking in the meetup and they started accepting Bitcoin, but they didn't really tell us. They just I think James did help them. But now I think they're actually the first church to accept Bitcoin, but they're just not going super public about it. But I think that the point of the Faith and Bitcoin website and organization is actually to give people like me and James and other Christians who are in Bitcoin a bit of authority, so that when we start talking to church leaders and saying, look, you should really start converting some funds into Bitcoin, we don't look like the one crazy internet money guy. We can be like, we're all affiliated with this professional looking organization, Faith and Bitcoin. But yeah, I think it's coming, mate. It's just that the church is a bit behind and we're already a bit ahead in Bitcoin. So maybe they may be behind businesses.
Yeah, and that makes sense for lots of reasons. I mean, if unless you're a small church with like 80% of the people there are Bitcoiners, which
Yeah.
seems unlikely but not inconceivable, a lot of churches would probably get some really negative feedback from some of their congregation if they said, well, we're gonna take that money you give us every week and put it in this magic internet money that you just read an article on the FT saying was going to die and go to zero.
Yeah.
It just requires a lot more thought and a higher risk profile it's one thing for a business to do it, but for a church, it's different level.
Yeah, kind of, mate. Like my friend who's the electrician, we were at church like a couple of years ago, and on Easter Sunday, they had these like popper firework things when they had like some climax moment in the music, and it was like all these like balloons going everywhere and like sparkly things going off, and I was like, bloody hell, like, look at all this stuff. And my mate said, that's my whole year's donation to church just blown up there in that one firework moment. So it's not that churches don't make stupid financial choices. I mean, it looked lovely and the kids went crazy in church, but none of the parishioners were there thinking, my gosh, that's all my money, apart from my mate Ash, who was like, that's literally, I know how expensive that stuff is. But they would be thinking the same if we started buying Bitcoin, the most pristine asset the world has ever seen. They'd be saying, oh no, don't know about that.
You don't want that. You don't want that. Put it in a
no, let's blow off fireworks.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay, well, that's really interesting. I mean, hopefully that's something that, with the work that you and James and others are doing, I mean, Bitcoin's for everyone, right? So the more tentacles we can get out there, business is really well represented. The work that the Bitcoin Collective guys are doing, but it's just really an interesting thread. Christianity as an actual thread for Bitcoin is just it's great. It's just yes, it's good. Okay, well, the last question I ask all my guests is, what's one? So I haven't read it for so long, I've messed it up already.
Yeah, I remember now.
What's one belief you held before Bitcoin that you've completely changed your mind about?
I think before I was in Bitcoin, I thought that the more you work, the better you're going to do. And I do believe that's true to an extent. But I think before I was in Bitcoin, I thought the only way to be able to be secure in the future is if you work continually harder throughout your career. You start in your 20s and you work hard. And then as you get older, you work harder and harder and harder and harder until you reach this tipping point where you can knock off and then you don't have to work hard anymore. And your sort of 10 years or 15, 20 years of retirement is a reward for working your ass off for a really long time. I think probably what's changed since I've been in Bitcoin is that I just think that's peak fiat mindset. It's like work your ass off so you can enjoy the older years of your life. I think that that actually is a perpetuated understanding that just causes people to run and run and run and run faster and faster and faster. And that really, my worldview, the Christian worldview, is life is to be enjoyed to its fullness. I will get the Bible verse wrong, but it's like Jesus came to bring life and life to its fullness. That's almost got that directly right, I think, that quote. And that it's not, your life is here to enjoy at the end, this little bit. It's here to enjoy the whole thing. And I think once you understand Bitcoin, it gives you this release, this weight off your shoulders that makes you feel, I can just work and do my craft and do my job and save, and I should be able to enjoy my life all the time. Like I shouldn't have to work it all crammed into one part so that I can enjoy the story at the end. So I think that for me is probably something that knowing about Bitcoin caused me to, I'm having a mini retirement right now in my life and I'm going to go back into work again. But before Bitcoin, I would never have thought about doing this. I would have thought I was crazy, anyone who took a year off work. So I think that's probably something that Bitcoin has really improved or my life massively from understanding Bitcoin.
Okay, yes, it's that's a good answer. And certainly one I haven't had before. The other thing, just to mention to anyone who's still hopefully watching or listening, is you are going to be coming to the pizza day that we're hosting in Bury St Edmunds on the 22nd of May, and taking part in some panel discussions on Bitcoin as a medium of exchange. So really looking forward to you coming back to Bury St Edmunds for that.
Yeah, mate, thanks. We're going to enjoy that weekend. Have a little time there.
Yeah, and I'll put a link in the show notes for anyone who's interested in coming. Basically, there's going to be lots of events during the day which are free to attend. So if you can take the day off work and come on the Friday, that'd be great. And then in the evening, we're hiring an event, and there's a pizza truck, there's a bar, there's panel discussions. We've got a Bitcoin vendor marketplace. So there's going to be loads of great stuff going on. And as you know, Myles, one of the best things about any of these events is just meeting other people, existing friends or new friends that you can meet from UK Bitcoin space. So yeah, it should be good.
I'm looking forward to loading up my Lightning wallet and spending some money as well, and just using that to buy Bitcoin related stuff. I just love doing that. It feels like you're really supporting an ecosystem as well.
Brilliant. Okay, where can people find you, Myles, if they want to reach out to you and listen to your wonderful podcast?
Yeah, thanks, mate. My website's mylesdhillon.com. You can find the podcast from there, or it's Should I Invest in Bitcoin? ? If you want to find the podcast anywhere.
Thanks, Myles. Thanks so much for being on, and I look forward to catching up with you in real life very soon.
Cheers, mate. Bye, man.
Cheers. Bye.